Adam, let's switch gears, talk a little football. Geoff Collins, familiar name, named Carolina's defensive coordinator. Coach Collins, a former head coach, of course, at both Temple and then at Georgia Tech. A defensive coordinator at a couple different places before that, Florida International, then Mississippi State, and then Florida. Adam, a couple of highlights of Coach Collins' tenure as defensive coordinators. He had his teams at Florida ranking in the nation's top 10 in total defense both years he was there. That was 2015 and 16. They were ranked 8th in the nation in 15. They were ranked 5th in the nation in 16. They were ranked top 25 at Mississippi State nationally in total defense both years he was there, in 2013 and 14. And when he was at FIU, he had the Panthers leading the Sun Belt Conference in total defense, scoring defense, and turnover margin. So his teams have statistically been successful defensively in the past. I think this is impressive that Collins at the time was the only coach ever to be nominated for the Broyles Award, that's given to the top assistant coach in college football, at 3 different schools, FIU, Mississippi State, and Florida. So a proven defensive coordinator. Now, having said that, his last time coordinating a defense was 7 years ago, now 8 years ago. So it's been a while since he's been a coordinator, but he was really good when he was. He had a very successful tenure at Temple. He had some success at Georgia Tech, but then it fell off by the end. So he played football in the state of North Carolina. He played at Western Carolina. And, Adam, as you so often see when you make changes, I think you very clearly see, like, okay, this is what we didn't like about what happened before. Let's make sure that we do something different to this. Geoff Collins has the reputation of being very aggressive defensively. My interpretation of him from his time when he was at Georgia Tech was that he is very much a high-energy kind of guy, which I think is different from what Carolina has had here recently. I do think it probably is inaccurate to say Carolina wasn't aggressive at all previously defensively. I just think that aggression wasn't very successful. So Geoff Collins is stepping into a role where the Tar Heels need him to get that defense good sooner rather than later. Of course, we still live in the portal world, so who knows? But there are some pieces, Power Echols most notably, that Carolina has coming back. Kamen Rucker up front. So there's some pieces there that have been successful. And now it's up to Geoff Collins to try and figure out how to best get those pieces in the right place.
I think if your only impression of Geoff Collins is as Georgia Tech's head coach, I think I would probably throw that out the window because I don't think it really matters
he's not the head coach
what
here.
You were as a head coach. It only matters if you're a good coordinator because that's the job you were hired to do. I do think it's fair to be given pause that he hasn't done that since 2016, and a lot of the things you just said about him coordinating defenses could have been said about Gene Chizik coordinating defenses.
The one thing I will say is the huge difference there is that Geoff Collins was still in the game. I mean, Gene Chizik moved into TV and while was around the game, was not in the game. Geoff Collins was in the game until, what was that? Halfway through last season. So it's different. He's only been out a year compared to Gene Chizik was out much longer.
And it sounds like he spent his year out, sort of out in quotation marks, going around to some different programs, taking in some practices, talking to some folks largely about defense at some big-time programs like Georgia, for example. If someone's going to take a year away from coaching, which he could do because Georgia Tech was paying him handsomely not to be the coach,
sure,
then that's what you want him to do. You want him to go find out how some other teams do it, see how that jives with what he likes to do, implement some things. And
I appreciate you saying jives.
Yeah, and maybe be an even better version of the coordinator that he was before. Carolina needs a better defense. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Geoff Collins' resume suggests he is capable of producing a better defense with the material he is given. Remember, when he became head coach at Georgia Tech, he was right after Paul Johnson. So he was handed this triple option roster and had to make him into a real football team. And I think here he's got some pieces.